Alright, so let's get started. So you can see in this scene here, we've got this dummy guy here, and he's going to get hit a couple of times, and then he's going to go crashing through this window, and it's going to shatter the window, and we're all going to go flying down to the ground, and there's going to be some billowy dust that billows out when he hits the ground, and all the glass will be shattering around him. So before we get started here, let's just go into our lighting setup here. And what we have here is we've got an AI Skydome light because we'll be rendering the glass with Arnold. And the beauty renders that you already have included were rendered with this setup here. So we've got a Skydome light, and mapped to the color channel is our included HDR image. And that's pretty much it. Although we've also got an AI Sky node here in the environment tab, and what we've done is we've mapped the Skydome light to the AI Sky color channel, and we've also turned off everything so it's not going to be illuminating the scene at all. Essentially, it's just going to be rendering the image in the background for our plate. So we've turned off visible and diffuse and glossy reflections and refractions, and make sure it doesn't cast shadows. We just want the visibility on. So this isn't casting any light into the scene, we're just able to view it as our plate. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the blood effects. So the idea with this is it's just going to be really quick and fast moving and motion blurred, and it's going to create a really fast splurt of blood that's going to die off, and we're just going to, it's going to whip by the camera. So what we're going to do is select our dummy here, and we're going to create a locator based on, that's going to be automatically parented to the edges of this guy. So if we select edges, let's select two edges that we want. And a really nice feature we have here is if we type in rivet down into our script here, this is going to create a locator in the middle of those two selected edges, and it's automatically going to be parented to our guy here. And this is extremely useful, really fast. Now we can parent our emitter to that. So he gets hit on the left and maybe on the right shoulder, his left shoulder, I guess. So let's do the same thing to here. And there we go. Now we have two locators. Perfect. So now let's create some emitters. Let's go to the Effects tab and select End Particles, Create Emitter, and let's rename this Blood Emitter. And I'm going to create this really simple. Just use a directional emitter. And let's keep everything default for now. Let's create that. So now let's go in and let's parent this to our rivet. Let's select our rivet and our blood emitter and hold down spacebar. And if we go to constrain here and parent with the option box, we want to make sure everything is just default settings, and let's turn off maintain offset. So this is going to snap it into place. Perfect. So now essentially I'm not going to emit with much speed. I'm going to use the momentum of our character here for most of the velocity for the particles. So first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we have some inherent velocity on our particles. So let's go into our channel box here, and here we have inherent factor. Let's turn this to 0.5, and let's rewind. So now that we can't really see them very much here, so let's go in and we're going to render these as blobbies. So if we take a look at our camera, let's see when we're out of frame here. So probably 2 seconds I'm going to have the lifespan on, and we don't need to have them keep simulating after that. So I'm going to turn the lifespan to a constant. Let's just say 2 seconds to make sure it gets out of frame. And let's play and stop here. So now the main look of our blood here, we're going to use blobbies. And if we go into shading, let's change these from points to blobby surface. And this is going to be really great. We're going to get some more organic shapes in that, not so uniform. So let's go into our particle size here. And I'm just going to drop this down to something smaller. And let's change the radius scale input to randomize ID. Let's randomize the values by about 0.25, about a quarter. So we've got a basic setup here. So let's go ahead and adjust the emission. So mainly I want to key this on and off. Let's say when he gets hit, let's turn this to 0. And let's have this on, let's key it off at 3 and key it on to a rate of 2000 at 4. And let's leave this on for, say, 4 frames. So let's set another key at 8, and then at 9, let's key it off. So we've got this little spurt of particles that's going to last for 4 frames. Okay. So one thing we need to do also is let's put a little bit of spread on here. And let's do a really, really low amount. I want to try to keep the particles together instead of a spray. So with the spread, we also have to increase the speed as well. So I'm going to do something with really low value, but I'm going to increase the random to the same value of the speed. So we get a bit more variance. You can obviously see one of the main things here is the stepping. You can see the frames. So this is one of the biggest things. To try to create a smooth looking effect, we're going to have to evaluate this in subframes. So I'm going to go into our preferences here. You see we've got a playback by 1. And when we cache these out, we want a lot of subframes, and it's going to help for motion blur as well. I'm going to evaluate this 10 times per frame. So I'm going to put this to 0.1. So now we're going to be emitting every 0.1 frames. So it's also important to note that our emitter will be emitting this value every 0.1 frames. So we're going to get 10 times the amount of particles as well. So you can see now we've got a much smoother emission going on, and that's pretty great.